All right, Brownie, here we are. I've been looking forward to this because I intentionally chose Old Boys Weekend. We're on the eve of Old Boys Weekend, Generations tonight, and then the big games of basketball and rugby tomorrow, sitting at the pavilion. So people listening to this won't see it, but beautiful view of the sports centre, the main field. And then behind us, the flag gently blowing up on the clock tower there. So we're going to go everywhere. We're going to come back to today, but let's go all the way back to the start. Where were you born?
The start, yeah. I was born in a small country town in New South Wales called Orange. Orange is, I think they say it's one of the colder places in New South
Let's say, yeah.
And I was born there, and I think within a year we'd moved to Dubbo, and that's when my brother and sister were born. So it was dad at the time was working for an oil company called Golden Fleece, which is no longer around, but I think it evolved eventually into Esso, and Esso evolved into Mobile. And yeah, Dad was a rep for Golden Fleece. They'd left Sydney and went and lived in Orange. So
Are you telling the listeners that the Big Bear shut that company down is what you're telling us? Big Richard.
it went broke.
Dad's Richard. I should know this. Mum's name?
Robin.
Robin.
Yeah.
And so you got one brother, Tim, sister's name?
Tristan.
So no one stayed in the bush? Everyone?
No. We moved all around New South Wales as young people. We basically, I started preschool in Dubbo because I'm about 3.5 years older than the others, than Tim. And from there, we moved from Dubbo to Moree. We had a time in Moree, I think it was around 6 months to a year. And then Dad got a job in Port Macquarie. And so I was going from school to school that way. And so we lived in Port Macquarie for quite a long time. And that's where we started nippers and started getting involved in swimming. And as a young family, we're sort of living in a wonderful part of the Port Macquarie that was near the ocean. And that's where a lot of the ocean and all that came to be. And then from there, Dad and his younger brother, decided to buy what they called a roadhouse back then, or a petrol station, which was in Grafton. And we moved to Grafton, and that's mainly where I grew up, if you could say, probably for the good 10 or 15 years.
So it was a SO server?
Yeah, it was an SO.
So through the company?
Yeah,
Wow.
they bought that, and it was called the Big River Roadhouse. And
On the Big River?
there was two basically places. If you were driving from Brisbane to Sydney or vice versa, you would stop at, and one was our place and one was in Taree, and that's where you would fill your car up or your bus up or the buses would stop. So many times there, Dad would call home. We lived maybe a couple of k's away, and Dad would call home and say, come down now. There's celebrities here.
Oh, how good.
Herbert.
No way. In the van of the roadies.
The little river, the little river band.
Little river band.
And all,
Awesome.
things like that. Or, it was quite fun living and working that was my first job too when I was younger.
So you jumped around schools. So memories of school, probably Port Macquarie more than country towns?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Port Macquarie, I think it was a primary started there. Look, I don't, so long ago, I don't remember a huge amount of it apart from where it was and some of the things we did. I know I did a lot of swimming as a young adult, a young student then, but Port Macquarie was, it was sort of maybe reception, if you could say, through to grade 2.
Okay.
Then.
So you can't remember much, but what sort of kid were you at primary school? Your parents will remember your report cards. Were you you got resilient from moving schools a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
Once you're settled.
You do, yeah. And look, it didn't help my education. I do remember in Grafton, because I did start at South Grafton Primary, and look into a lot of activity, did a lot of different things, from obviously swimming and life saving through to guitar and through to all these different things in primary. But my academics suffered, And I remember many a time sitting at the dining table with mum or dad that my reading was horrific. And look, I would say since I've been at TSS, I've really worked hard
Mm.
on that. But as an adult, but as a student, yeah, mum and dad tried so hard. My reading and comprehension was really bad. And to the point that if I think that back now and that testing wasn't around, I reckon I was dyslexic.
Yeah, there you go.
But I just felt back then there were other things that I should have enjoyed in life. So my academics was average.
That's not uncommon, particularly for boys. Maybe the literacy, maybe not as strong. Everyone's got strengths in different areas, right? But you, unbelievable at reading music. So, what's the first song you ever played on the guitar?
Eagles,
Eagle.
Hotel California,
Oh, Brownie, please tell me that's your favourite
and
song.
Take It Easy.
Is
Eagles
favourite song of all time?
of all time. Uh, there's many songs, but I do love a song by the Goo Goo Dolls called Iris.
All right. Well, I'll put it on my playlist. I always put it on my playlist when someone tells me their favourite song. Mine's Hotel California. So what a
Oh,
cracker!
Hotel
It's a cracker.
Yeah, and I forced mum and dad in the car because we did a lot of driving those days to play the Eagles' greatest hits album, just
It's a
non-stop.
shame they never dropped into the survey. Didn't come to
No,
Australia. That would have been
that
pretty
thing-
cool. Far out. So then let's not get away too quickly because we're going to land at TSS pretty soon. But what's something you got from your mum and dad that's a trait you've taken on in life? What's something you learnt from them?
Look, from both of them, but dad worked really hard, and so did mum. Mum worked really hard at home with 3 kids. She quit a job when she was younger to basically become a mum, and dad worked really hard at basically fending for us. And so from that, I have picked up their work ethic.
Mm.
Always finish what you start. Always do the best you can, even if it's not the best that people want. You always just have to do the best you can. I've always tried to make sure that I tick all the boxes, and I've picked it up from them. And whether it applied to sport or whether it applied to a workplace, that work ethic was something that they gave me. Because Dad originally, when he had the service station, had us mowing the lawns and pumping fuel. And I couldn't tell you how young we were, but it wasn't much older than 10. And it was giving us a good grounding, the value of money. Uh, and probably in my older days, I think now that probably gave me the background of business that I can draw on sitting class. So, yeah, that work ethic and the value of how much it is that, that how much things cost your parents.
Yeah, you appreciate that once you become a parent. But the thing I love about work ethic, it takes no talent whatsoever. It's just one of those things you can always apply yourself. Doesn't matter what skill level you are, whether it's sport or classroom or at work. It's definitely one of those, sounds cliche, but takes no talent at all. So then the family move Port Macquarie up to Grafton at some point. So that's through dad's work or?
Yeah. So he got the service station, and I would have been maybe 6 or 7 by then, and basically went from primary school into high school, South Grafton High. So we're, the South Grafton Rebels fan, which was their local rugby league team, and across the river was the Grafton
The arch
Ghosts.
rival. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and rugby union wasn't really on the radar there because there wasn't much of a rugby union following in Grafton. The club Dad had a lot to do with. Eventually they got their grounds, and by all accounts they've still got the same grounds now. But yeah, Grafton was a great place to grow up. It had so many things that a young boy could do, and it was wonderful to a point. And that point became when I had to leave and come boarding.
And to TSS then. So no family affiliation with TSS at all.
Nothing. Look,
So how does it get on the family's radar?
I think Mum and Dad Dad had an auntie who lived at Bribey Island. I'm pretty sure that's how the story goes. And she had a friend who knew something about Southport, but Mum and Dad were looking. I would have been about 15 at the time and 16, and they were looking for me to get out of Grafton.
Yeah.
I could have gone to places like Woodlawn, but they were all Catholic schools. I could have gone to Sydney, but Mum and Dad, and this is, they've told me in the past, that it's basically you're weighing it up as parents. You're weighing up, an 8-hour drive to Sydney, trying to find accommodation just to go and see your kids, or a 4-hour drive it was from Grafton then to go and spend a week on the Gold Coast, have a holiday and maybe see your kids. So it ended up being the greatest decision they've ever made, and for me as well.
We'll get to that because there's a lot of ground to cover, but you said before you've changed schools a lot, but changing to boarding, it's a big transition. So what was that like for you? You're the first in the family to come up here?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I was the first to come to any boarding school in our family, and that's extended family as well, because I was the oldest of all of the
cousins
cousins and grandkids. And look, I'll say it now that I struggled. I struggled so much. I remember my first day walking into, back then, the headmaster would interview you in the bursar, which is basically admissions back then. And you'd sit down there in a nice sort of suit and tie if you had one. And I'm going, Mum and Dad, this is not me. I've got all my mates back in Grafton and I just want to finish school there and I'll go off and do an apprenticeship or something or whatever it's, work at the roadhouse. And anyway, as it turned out, we ended up in Delcrate House. I can't even remember how that came about, but I walked into the Year 11 dorm, which is nowadays the Delcrate Common Room. And there would have been 25, 30 beds in there. And it was basically a bed and a small table and a small locker you would put your clothes in. And bang, 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 all the way around the room. And these two guys came up to me and said, what's your name, etc. And one was Rob Richards, another guy was Grant Fair. And they were just, it was so welcoming. I would say I struggled for the first term, but then I remember being asked the question, would you leave? And I went, no way in hell. It was just one of those moments that you go, this is the right place to
be. I've drunk the Kool-Aid, so no mobile phones, no email. How long from the day they dropped you off? When was the next time you saw your mum and dad?
Oh, it was Easter.
Easter, whole term.
Yeah. And I think that may have been, you're talking a 4-hour trip and Dad worked a lot, but it would have been a bit of a journey to get up here. And obviously you could make, back then there weren't too many phones that you could.
Even landlines.
One collect phone, I remember in the hallway of Delta, you could get on there in a landline if it was available.
Exactly.
And you would call home. But yeah, I didn't see them until Easter, I'm pretty sure. And again, it was like going back to, Grafton was home, but somewhere very different to where I'd been living. So, and I got absorbed the Gold Coast straight away.
And so part of that absorption then's getting involved. So what did you do straight away? You said you grew up swimming, nippers. Loved your rugby.
The first weekend, because I was quite big into surf life saving by then. And I came from a little club in northern New South Wales called Woolgoolga. At Woolgoolga, I was, I did beach events, I did Ironman events, ski, board, a whole range of things, and went on and represented quite well in that. And then I come up to the Gold Coast and joined the mighty Southport Club.
I was actually going to ask you the fried eggs.
Yeah,
Southport.
fried eggs.
Never knew which club you joined.
So so my first weekend, my first week actually, I some reason ended up at the tuck shop. And the tuck shop was over next to the pool.
Yeah, the old tuck shop. We'd be looking at it right now if it was still there.
And the lady running the tuck shop at the time was a lady called Pauline Davies. And her husband, John, was one of the maintenance men. And it somehow slipped out that I was wanting to join Southport Surf Club and get involved. And said, we'll get you over there on the weekend. Long story short, they became my second parents for the time I was, for many years. And their son, he went on to be an Olympian kayaker, and his brothers, I did lots of things, activities and triathlons with. And look, that family, the Davies family were a great part of my memory.
I should have asked, did their son come here?
Yeah, the whole of them did, Andrew, Scott and Grant. Yeah.
Pretty typical day families just adopting boarders. Like it's one of the special parts. There's this division between board and day boy early on, the young guys. And then as you become mates over the years, they end up becoming your best friends. And you don't realise till you're your own parent how much it would have cost to have you for the weekend and all the food we'd eat and all those things, but never complain. They just take every weekend. So you look back fondly on those families that show a lot of gratitude. So then you swim at school, you
Yep.
rugby.
Yep. Played rugby, did athletics, did cross country. Yeah, it was. I took everything.
Yeah.
Well, I had a band, We formed a little band back then.
What sort of songs the band's playing back then?
We were playing
Bit of Eagles. Yeah,
songs,
nice.
an Eagles song, yeah, and it was guys from different grades
Yeah.
as well that that really cemented my place here. I just enjoyed all of that. In that first year, year 11 was one of those times where I wanted, you gravitate to the things you enjoy, and I enjoyed the whole experience.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
That's all right though. So everyone's got their strengths, as I said.
Yeah.
So then you graduate, great experience, good mates. Probably wish you came a bit earlier.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And look, nothing. Grafton at the time was again another wonderful place that gave me lots of opportunities. But I made the move. If it had been a year or two before that, would have been brilliant. But it didn't really matter because the guys that I'd met, some of them had been here since they were very young.
Yeah.
Just put their arms around you, and you're still mates now.
You're off and racing.
Just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, nice. So then you finished school, Brownie, and am I right that you studied nursing?
Yeah.
Straight out of school?
No.
No.
I did this a couple of years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I asked by an English teacher, Karina Redler, to come in and speak to her class about my journey from school, from TSS as a student to TSS as a staff member. And I had to talk about what I'd done. So I sat down there and wrote all these different things that I'd done. And basically in the 8 years from year 12 till I started full-time here, I had 14 careers and 23 different jobs.
14 different careers.
And one of them was
nursing. So it's studying to do nursing, or could you just work
back then it was slightly different to what it is now. I moved into PA hospital, lived in a tower that used to be in front of hospital. It was a residential hospital. You would spend about 8 weeks in a classroom learning basic things. And then you would spend another 8 weeks in a ward, and you would be assigned a ward. There were 3 guys in my class and about 40 girls. And the first ward I got was gynecology.
No way. The minority of boys, and you get the gynecology. There you go. So
I know exactly what women have to go.
there you go, straight away. Life lesson as a husband a bit later on. So then of those 20 odd jobs, apart from gynecology, which one did you enjoy the most looking back?
Oh, look, some of them were all around the world. Probably, if you could say, my favourite one was actually being a Gold Coast lifeguard. I was a council lifeguard.
Paid lifeguard out
Paid
front?
lifeguard. I did that just before I went nursing, but there was a whole mixture of. I was a crewman on a private yacht. We got asked to be on this yacht in Mexico. I was staying in Mexico. And the skipper needed some crewmen. I said, yeah, I'll do it. I always said yes to something. And so we got in. He said, look, the owners are coming tomorrow. We need to clean it up and make it ready for them. Standing at the gangplank, the owners walk in. I go, oh no, I know this guy. And it was Dean Martin, the actor. And I go, oh, and there was maybe 50 people in his crew or family. And we served them drinks. And then somebody raced on. All I remember is a guy racing on from the marina and went up to the family and said something, and suddenly the family up and left. And so we weren't doing all. And that, anyway, what happened? Dean Martin's son flew for the US Air Force, and it crashed his plane into a mountain
No,
that day. And that was it.
that was the end of it. So you,
The boat out anyway and went fishing.
absolutely had all the food and drink and everything.
Reef,
Wow.
that fame.
So you were kind of working on the TSS cruise ship before anybody else. Wow.
It was
Oh.
big, like, well, big in some comparison.
So just going back to school, did you ever attend TSS with your brother?
No.
So he comes later on.
Yeah.
So then
He was a year after. He started in, say, year 9 or year 10, maybe. And he finished in 86, so it must have been year 10.
So you're 8 years at schools. Colleen on the scene by that stage?
She was at nursing.
Nursing. That's where you met her.
That's one of the 40 girls at nursing. Yeah.
So 40 girls, how many blokes?
3.
3.
Yeah.
You are the minority.
One got spinal, which was again probably one of the hardest wards.
Yeah.
And it was one of the hardball wards for me, even though I wasn't in there. But that family that I was talking about that looked after me when I was at school, John, who worked here as a maintenance guy, he was also a very well-known sweep of a boat. He used to ride from home at Runaway Bay to school to Northcliffe at that time, or Southport, I think it was Northcliffe, and got hit by a car, ended up in a wheelchair. And he was in spinal when I was in it. And it was just...
One of the 3 blokes is in there working in the ward.
And one of them, they said, come and see. And
jeez.
There.
That's heavy.
Oh, it was... And it's like, and you win gold, I will stand up. And he was basically paralysed from his stomach down. And he stood. And that's the last time he stood up.
That's it.
And crazy.
Crazy. And then of those 3 blokes, did any stay in nursing?
Well, I didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say you didn't. Did the guy that went to the spinal ward?
I lasted 18 months. I became an EN, enrolled nurse.
Officially,
I passed one exam. I didn't get to the RN stage.
The registered nurse phase.
But there was different reasons for that. It ended up not being the role that I really enjoyed. And so I left there. I was seeing Carleen. She stayed on. She didn't finish either, but it was a time of our lives where we thought, all right, let's move back to the Gold Coast.
Did you know then you were going to marry her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to convince her to love you.
Took a lot. Yeah. Brisbane girl coming to the Gold Coast.
It's big.
I think I asked the question, have you ever been down here before? And, her family used to come here all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you ever been to the beach? Things like that. But it took a little wooing, if you could say, to win her over.
So you win her over singing Hotel California on the guitar at home on a solo. And then so you meet Carleen, you come back to the coast. Do you re-enter the workforce at TSS then?
No. I did odd jobs then. I was a karaoke... How would you say? Karaoke and master.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, in a bar in Surfers.
You could have run the show in Hong Kong. Wow.
I worked in a bar in Surfers in a place called Tall Stories. And I worked in another place called Barry A's. I had all these little odd jobs.
And they've all closed down. So there's a theme here with the Browns. Yes. Everything you work for closes down.
And anyway, I put my hand up in about 19... I can't remember who contacted me, but somebody said, look, a lady at school wanted help with the swim team. Yep. Her name was Priscilla McClellan. And so I volunteered for a season in the 1991 year. And it was like Brad Hackett was here. And not Brad, his brother, sorry. Yeah. His brother was here.
Craig,
and a lot of others. And so I volunteered that year, and the pool had only just been built.
The big one. The little one existed.
The big one was still around. Yeah. It was like what we trained in when we were at school. And then the big one was like magnificent.
So this is pre-touchpads, so it's 50 minutes exactly.
The touchpads came with the pool.
Did they?
Yeah.
We still built it 50 metres long. So when you put the
1 centimetre,
Unreal. Yeah. You put the touchpad, those listening that don't know, we put the touchpads in. It's not FINA distance, so no records can be held in there. Plus, it's really shallow at either end. So fortunately, we've raised the depth of it, but they built it deep in the middle for water polo.
We never played water.
Never played water polo.
They did Very rarely did they do it for PE.
Crazy, because there's a lot of lanes to take out, I suppose. But yeah, we built 12 lanes for 12 houses. So we're going to have a little game later on because you coached swimming here for a long time. There's some pretty good swimmers under your watch. And then you're involved with rugby as well for a long time. But before we get there, you come back to work at Tess. So Colleen and you get married at some point on the Gold Coast too?
I've been working at school for full time for nearly a year.
In swimming and swimming?
Well, I got offered a job as the head swim coach because Priscilla retired.
Yeah.
But at the time, there was no full-time coaches.
Yeah.
And the if you could say the CFO then, his name was Wallace.
Yeah. I've seen his name on the Hawk.
He said, there's no way this person's going to be a swimming coach. So I did 40 hours a week grounds, mowing lawns, and then had to do swimming coaching on top of that. And it eventually evolved over a couple of seasons where the 40 hours reduced to a point that I was sort of helping with the maintenance at the pool.
Yeah.
And then a guy called Andrew Tranner, who was the
Trending trainer then,
he basically got me into the sports office, and that's where that began.
So you've done a lot of roles here, Brownie. So sports administration, back into boarding at some point, because we'll talk about kids in a moment, but you go into Del Pratt resident assistant housemaster. Then you end up head of Roger's house for a long time.
Yeah.
That's year 6 and 7 back then, or
5, 6, 7.
5, 6, 7.
For 2 years.
How many beds?
Gosh, we had, I think the year I took over from Lindsay Close, we had 12 kids.
It's a bit smaller. Yeah. Then you ever run Del Pratt? I should know all this. I should have done research.
I had a term off, and I had a crack at the role there as an acting.
Yeah.
And look, it was so great to be even accepted into that house as a non-academic staff member.
And we'll get to that in a moment, because you become a teacher. Yeah. So you've done some boarding roles. Then you were the manager of the First 15 for a long time. And all of those things you introduced still exist today. The chapels, the camaraderie of a team, just the things you do off the field and how important that is. So, as I said before, we're going to play a little game about who you'd rather coach. And some of those are rugby players, some of those are swimmers. So it'll be interesting to see who that is. So lots of roles in this school. Before we talk about your kids, when and why did you make the decision to become a teacher?
Well, look, I was given 3 opportunities at TSS through my time that I've been here. And the first opportunity came when Bruce Cook allowed me to be the assistant housemaster in Belgrade.
Non-teaching at that stage. Yeah.
And then the second opportunity came, Greg Wayne allowed me to be the housemaster of Rogers as a non-teacher. But the third opportunity was in the same year that I started in Rogers. There was Bruce Wright, Greg Wayne and myself jumped in a car and drove, I think, close to 5,000 Ks in 2 weeks.
So you followed the founder's footsteps or something?
And in that car, a conversation occurred that Greg said, you've been here now, that time probably 20 odd years. You need to go and get an academic degree, because it's not, you've got your business degree. I had that already. He said, just go and get a dip ed, and you can become a teacher, and it can all fall into place. And basically from that conversation, he allowed me to still work here and study at the same time. It took me a couple of years to do that.
Because you're balancing it with full-time work and doing all the pre-service experience you have to do.
And another part of that was that Alan Parsons, the deputy head at the time, said, you are not doing your pre-service experiences. I had 2 of them. You're not doing it at TSS.
Can't do it at TSS.
You've got to go out and see the real world.
So putting you on the spot, did you learn anything in that postgraduate studies that improved what you do on a daily basis, working with kids, teaching, or you had all that experience anyway? Did you learn anything, or is it literally for you felt like just a piece of paper and a formality?
Yeah, look, you do learn some pedagogy stuff, areas of that sort of that helped, writing assessment, all of that.
Yeah.
But But the thing that I went into both of that whole course, but particularly those two pracs that I did, was there's so many years of coaching prior to that. And coaching's like being in a
Of
classroom.
course it is. Managing, it's harder because you're managing kids outside. At least the classroom's got boundaries,
Yeah.
like four walls and structure.
My prac teacher supervisors, both of them at the time, I never told them that I was from TSS. At the time, for both of those pracs, I was a housemaster. And I never told them till the last day where I invited them and thanked them for looking after me in those days. And now I was a bit mature. I was,
Yeah.
what would have been, late 40s. And they both said in their reviews, this person is such a mature teacher, and it had to come from being his experience in coaching. And I had told them that I had coached different sports and stuff like that. And for any young teacher now, the first thing you should do is go out and coach a team,
Yeah.
any sport,
Work with children in
work
any
with
way.
children,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you learn how to read signs straight
Yeah.
away if they're having an off day, a good
Yeah.
day, everything. And then classroom management is like classroom sport management. So yeah, the things I probably learned were more the theoretical side of it.
Yeah.
But from that classroom management point, I mean, there were other students asking me advice.
Yeah. The lecturers were probably
teachers.
asking you for advice. So then what do you prefer then? Teaching in the classroom or teaching out of the classroom?
I'm not a person that takes. I don't do the things very easily. I take a long time to do things so that they are right. If you could say, I quite like, as I said before, ticking off a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
And it got to a point there that I had worked so hard to become a teacher. When I got it, I love it.
Yeah. Good.
I love it. I still love coaching, but I love the ability to, you could say, impart knowledge. But my style of teaching is actually imparting the experiences that I've had and learned. And I go back and tell little stories about things, and hopefully it opens the eyes of boys, particularly in business. And I've never been a businessman. My wife has, but I've actually never run a business.
Yeah, well, you knew what it was like to run one when you were 10 because you watched one. And the same format is the same for any business, a school, a servo, a multi-million dollar fuel company. They're all very similar in structure, I suppose. So there's no doubt in those experiences. We've got to cover two things. One, back at school, the teacher that had the biggest impact on you.
And again, at school here at TSS, I was sort of out of the classroom experiences more so than the theory side of it. Look, I would say there was two that did a huge amount for me on the field as well as in the boarding house. And one was definitely Bruce Moore.
Okay.
Bruce Moore saved me, protected me in a number of ways as a student, because being a young guy, you do some silly things and
Absolutely.
corrected your ways.
Yeah.
But the other guy was a guy called Greg Redan, and Greg, very good friends with Greg Norman.
Yeah.
And both of them worked very close together. But Greg taught me, because I did quite a lot of Ironmans, as in surf Ironmans, but also the triathlon type of Ironman type of stuff after. And he was basically the first big name in triathlon in Australia. He got seventh in the Hawaiian Ironman 3 years in a row.
I think I must have been at school about then when he was doing it. He had a hell of a tan. He was in the sun all day.
Nowadays, oh my, sort of prune.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did a lot. He was basically the two teachers I involved in my 21st.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to the late Canon Bruce Morn and to Greg Redan if he gets a chance to listen to this. So all of these experiences prepare you to become a teacher. But I always say this, and I know some families don't have a choice to can't have children, but you and Carleen are lucky enough to have two kids. And if there's anything that can change the way you teach, it's having your own kids. So Maddie comes along.
Yeah, Maddie was first, but I only just started school and again, coaching long hours. Maddie came along in 92, and I mean, it gives your life a little bit of purpose.
It does.
All right. Yeah, I did work long hours and I did, learned that ethic, but it was to provide for a family now. And we just bought our first house and, it was the start of a new stage in my life. It was, and she grew up and then Mackenzie came along.
So Macca comes along.
Yeah.
What's it like to be a generational parent? Was it always going to be TSS
I
before?
always hoped to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't, look, we were very fortunate with the school system at that time that we got some relief as a staff member.
Yeah.
And he came from grade 7
Yep.
on, and he was the same as me. Carla and I sat him down after a few days. He did not want to come. He was at St. Kevin's.
Yeah.
All his mates were going to, the Aquinas and a few other places like that. I don't think he had any mates coming to TSS. And we sat him down. We said, look, we're going to give you 6 months. And if you don't like it, we as a family will make the decision to move you back to with your mates. Knowing full well that what's his.
There's no way he's going back. Exactly.
But we asked him at 6 months and he said, Mum and Dad, no chance.
I'm in. Drunk the Kool-Aid. What house was he in? Radcliffe?
Walker.
He had no affiliation. So just by
we were very lucky to have a guy called Steve Roberts, who I was good mates with then as well. And Steve took him under his wing and took him through.
Fly through. So Maddie's got a successful little business herself.
Yeah.
Macca's all growing up. It happens in a blink of an eye. What's a trait for both of those kids of yours you're really proud of?
Look, they're both very driven in their field. Maddie, she does a sort of a project management for houses and design of houses, and that's her entrepreneurial skills. Where I don't think Mackenzie sort of had that entrepreneurial, but he certainly was. He's very focus driven on where he wants to be and what he wants to do. To the point that I think I was telling you a year or so ago, he's basically done his GAMSAT and been accepted into a medicine program after doing a double degree in commerce and economics.
Amazing.
And working at the Treasury for the last 5 years or so. She now wants to go into medicine. So he's pretty driven in what he wants to do. So they've both got that. They've both got a big drive to be successful in their own area, their own world.
Yep.
And that makes us as parents incredibly proud. They're still family orientated. We had a big family gathering the other day of all my cousins of all my family and Carlene's family, and they still, are very involved in the family as well as their own lives. So
good.
it's wonderful. Yeah.
So
thing to see.
They are very driven, and I think they've got your meticulous nature. Having a meticulous nature and ticking every box makes you a very good organizer of a tour. You've been on a few over the years, but which is your favourite looking back? So you've got kids and Carlene at home. If you're going away, it's got to be worth it because they're all a couple of weeks long. What's the one you look back and go, geez, that was a good tour? Because you leave no stone unturned. Everything is organised to the minute.
Look, my philosophy, I've done 19 international tours.
19 international tours. My word. Well done.
9 international tours.
19, Brownie.
Yeah. And they've all been, at least a minimum of a week to 10 days.
Minimum, yeah. So Hong Kong was probably the minimum, about a week. And then some of those World Cup, 3 weeks sometimes. 2-3 weeks.
But if you look at the ones that I thoroughly enjoyed from an opportunity, every tour I've been on that I've organised, I wanted to give the kids an experience. And an experience that they would never forget or they draw on in their life going on. And one of the trips I did 4 of these, and I was lucky to do with Kerry Dixon and Mark Wilkins. We did the US.
Of course, the business tours. Yeah. So New York Stock Exchange.
We did 6 cities in 12.
Ringing the bell at the Stock Exchange. Like, seriously.
Just lots of, we were in Washington the year before, a couple of years, I suppose, before those riots. And we'd been through the Washington Capitol building through security, through all the different things. And we sat watching the Senate and all of these things. And suddenly 2 years, 3 years later, I see them charging and breaking in there. I'm going, how did that happen?
Yeah, you were
Because
literally
we
there.
were in there.
Yeah,
But we knew how hard it was
like
to
Fort
get.
Knox.
But yeah, those trips that we used to take, one year we took about 30, 40 kids with about 7 staff, and the other years we took 3 staff and maybe 25.
I know.
But they were some of the great memories that I have.
Great memories. And for the kid, that's what you remember as a student. Some of the experiences in Hong Kong, the going to the New York Stock Exchange, that's once in a lifetime.
On my last trip, there were 4 adults. One was Dale Dixon, which was Kerry's husband.
Yeah.
And Mark and Kerry, with this particular night, we were in New York, and we were to go to a play called Kinky Boots or something. And it's
Organised by Mark
Yeah,
Wilkins.
it's a Broadway show. And I mean, I'd been to a couple of Broadway
Yeah.
shows before, and I'm going, this. Anyway, an hour or 2 before we were supposed to leave, Kerry came to me and said, you're not coming with Mark and I and taking the boys to this Broadway show. You're going with Dale, and you're going to see a band. And I went, fantastic. Yeah, where is it? He said, you're going to Madison Square Garden, and you're going to go and see U2.
No.
And U2 was one of my favourite
With
bands.
no kids, you just go and enjoy it.
We had at the ball. We were
Awesome.
We were above the stage. It was just like must have been the last 2 seats in
That's
the concert.
cool. You too.
Yeah.
What album were they singing then?
He
had finished.
Stupid.
Yeah, awesome.
This is early 2000s.
Favorite U2 song? One?
With
Streets of
Without
Rage.
You.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, nice.
Without You,
Yeah,
Streets of-
good songs, and you'd sing those well.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to play this game soon, but
Yeah.
and I haven't actually done it on my phone while recording, so I hope it all works out. But we'll see how we go. Before we get there, Brownie, I'm going to talk about Old Boys Weekend for a moment. And so, with all of that experience, son came here, very supportive wife, let you work in boarding. You've lived a life. My God, you've lived a life. What's it mean to be a TSS old boy?
Look, again, I had that opportunity when I was young. I was given that opportunity by my parents to come to a school like this, not knowing what to expect. And I lapped it up. And to be an old boy now and have my son have gone through here, change it for the world. The relationships that I've made lasted me forever. I met and saw guys overseas that I'd gone to school with. And we had a really close family, or had a close family, who lived in New York, who had come here on exchange. So old boys can be anywhere. And you can run into people all over the world and not even know they're there. So it's that relationship, that connection that everybody has. And since being a staff member, I can sit on a plane and a person will come up to you and go, do you remember me? And I go, yes, but half the time I can't.
Can't remember everyone.
But it's a wonderful experience. And I've had so many wonderful memories as an old boy, being able to be a part of things like these weekends. I've had my 40th only a couple of years ago, and there would have been 25, 30 guys from my year then, all heading towards 60. And to be able to even just chat with them for a day at an event like this, where some of them live in all places all around the world and have multiple of different careers, they all have one passion, and that's to come back and do this weekend. And we do it.
We do it well. We do. I know schools do it differently, but I agree with you there. We do a good job of it. And it's 3 days. It's not a weekend. It's almost a week now, but older old boys yesterday, golf day today, big function tonight, and then a big day tomorrow. So what would you say then, Brownie? Go flip that to a prospective family. Sign up to TSS. What's your advice? There are plenty of kids who listen to this. Parents may be looking at TSS, staff might bring their kids here. What's your advice for a little Macca Browne who's in year 4 and loving primary school, but the decisions to send him to TSS? What's your advice for a kid that's about
Get them on campus first. Get them on campus and see what this place is like. And then allow your son to absorb everything. Give them time, whether it be like I did, 6 months or a year or something like that, because they will eventually loved this place for everything that it has. The opportunities are endless. If you wanted to be a musician, if you wanted to be on drama, if you wanted to be a sportsman or anything else, an academic, this place will allow your son to grow and be the best person he can be. And I've gone through that, and now I'm living it again as a staff member. And you've got the best asset of TSM that I feel at the moment is the staff, because of the fact that every staff member I could name loves this place as much as I do, and some of them aren't olders.
It's a real privilege to be a staff member at this school, and I agree. And I was only thinking before this that I miss the Kaisers and the Sermons. So for my vintage, it was the Johnny Wallaces and the Phil Wards. You're the Johnny Wallace and Phil Ward and the Frank Sermons and Harry Kaisers, to a huge generation of boys. So
4 headmasters.
Amazing.
Yeah.
4.
And 1 as a student and 3 as a staff.
So this is the first time in a long time you sat in front of the headmaster when you weren't in trouble. So I saw how nervous you were at the start. We won't tell some of the stories. No. So look, I hope this works. I've never done this before, but I'll just check it's still working. It is. So we're going to play a little game. Time for the rubber to meet the road. I gave you a little inkling at the very start what we were going to do. And we're playing elimination, which you might know the game. So I'll give you 2 names. You have to eliminate one. The who's left in goes up against the next name I call out. And then the game's called Who Would You Rather Coach? Now, these are all TSS old boys. You love your rugby, been involved for a long time, coached with your dad forever and a day, first 15 manager, but you're also a head of swimming for a long time. So some of these names, Olympians, Commonwealth Games swimmers, national champions, coached by you. So first 2 are rugby names. So you have to eliminate one of Robert Simmons or James Slipper. Who would you rather coach? Tough game, isn't it? They're going to listen to this too. And it's their reunion.
Both of them I have wonderful memories of.
I know.
One I went to Japan with, and the other was the captain of rugby here for the years I was in the manager. Look, Simo, he probably, if anything, was a favourite. James, I was the manager for him, but Simo, I did coach him at a young age in under 14s, and so I'd probably put Simo.
Okay, Simo, more I like that. That's fine. So Simo, though, goes up against, probably should have been a swimmer himself. Simo is so tall. Goes up against one of TSS best swimmers, I think, Ben Goulet.
Would be Ben, and not for the reason he was the swimmer. He was, and he's still a wonderful young man. That I had a lot to do with his family and the story behind him, to the point that I still keep in touch with him quite regularly.
Current parent now?
Parent too now. He's in grade 7.
Yeah.
I'd lived in Hong Kong for a while. Yeah.
Got a little winery. The wine at the 125 galas from Goulet's winery.
Down in Tasmania.
I don't know much about wine, but a little taste test, and it was absolutely beautiful. So good to have the family back at TSS and involved. All right, then. I wish I could say the next name was as nice a bloke as Ben Goulet, but the next one's a terrible human, which Ben Goulet goes up against Nathan Sharp.
Yeah. No. There's a story there that I probably can't talk about with both of them, but another story, I took Ben Goulet, I took Emma Snowsall, a couple of other good athletes to Hong Kong. We did a training camp for 2 weeks, and we watched Sharpie's first ever game for the Reds in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong? There you go.
He was still a young man, and he played Hong Kong 15 or something. We all went along to watch it. But, I think Ben Goulet's girlfriend at the time became Sharpie's wife.
Okay.
I'll probably put Ben Goulet.
Okay, so Ben Goulet over Nathan Sharp, without doubt. Well done. Good choice. Okay. Ben Goulet, bit of a run. He goes up against another Ben Tapawahi. Legend of a human.
Yeah, both. I had Ben Tapua in the Delprat in my time, and experienced him as a young man. One of my favourite moments ever at TSS occurred with him and his family. I'll keep that one private. But look, I still have to go with Ben Goulet. But Ben Tapua is a genuine. And if you ever watch the footage of the 2006 Premiership at State High with around 10,000 people, and Ben Tapua lifting the trophy, that will then show you what type of human he is.
Didn't lift his head.
Didn't lift his head. No.
In respect of the trophy, what it stood
Trophy
for.
and of his team.
What a human being. Taps, shout out to you, my friend. Benny Goulet's in for a while here, so now he goes up against another swimmer, one of life's good human beings, Lee McBean.
Ben was on that tour in Hong Kong. I coached him as an under 14-year-old rugby player. He swam for a guy called Dennis Cottrell out of Miami, and he came with me on a swimming trip to Hong Kong. But as an under 14 rugby player, he was a much better swimmer.
Okay, a very good swimmer. So who's the best though? Or who would you rather coach in swimming?
Who would I rather
Ben or
coach?
Lee? Both coachable.
Very coachable. Both wonderful, wonderful humans. I still send a text to Lee every birthday. His birthday's around my birthday.
Yeah, nice.
And he lives on the Sunshine Coast now.
Yeah.
But I'll stick with Ben.
Ben's on fire here. Well, I think he'll keep going because he's going up against Adam Lacey. I wouldn't coach if you paid me $1 million. So his 30-year reunion this year.
Yeah.
Lace man up against Ben Goulet.
Another unbelievable thing.
What an athlete to do.
A man.
Yeah,
were just salt of the earth parents who fit the life of the whole school, and they were wonderful. And Adam was a wonderful guy, and still, obviously,
current parent now too. So,
oh gosh,
Goulet versus Lacey. I knew this one would tear you apart.
Sorry, but I've got to stay with Ben.
No, that's good, man. Well, Ben's on fire because he's going up against Poss, who tells us all how good he is at rugby and swimming. So, who we got, Ben Goulet or Lee Holzbaum?
I suppose he's my boss at the moment.
That's it. Far away. This is who'd you rather coach, mate?
And he tells me he did a little bit of training, but he was a good cricketer and he was good at everything else.
Yeah.
So probably Ben stays in front here. But yeah, Poss is a genuine TSS.
He loves it. There's no questioning his passion, that's for sure. All right, so Ben Goulet, getting out of the last couple of names here. David King Christopher, who I think in your eyes could be TSS best swimmer.
I think looking at all of the students that I've ever been associated with, he was an outstanding swimming talent, to the point that he could have been as good as some of Australia's best swimmers, the Grant Hackett's and Ian Thorpe's. But at 15, he unfortunately got glandular fever because he'd been trained so hard as a young guy. And he held GPS records, but national records as well, but GPS records for over 25 years. He was so coachable that he pushed himself so hard that he basically wore himself out. And he came back in my second or third year of coaching and helped me coach because his younger brother was there as well, Jamie. And David was an exceptional person. Yeah. And he would be the only excuse to not have been. It would be David.
Is he more coachable than Ben?
Yeah.
Is he? Yeah. All right. Benny Goulet went on a run of all runs.
And Bennett appreciate that to be knocked out.
Yeah. All right. Well, David King Christopher, your most coachable swimmer, or the person you'd rather coach in swimming, goes up against the rat, Matt Robles.
Look, I swam in a squad with Matt years ago.
It is a fiddle, isn't it?
When we were down at Centre Point. We swam together there, and he reminded me of being in the relay team. And I never coached him in rugby because he was sort of playing for the first for 3 months.
A lot of years.
Look, we shared some funny stories together that had happened at school, and I'd got him back many times. A great guy to have on.
Yeah.
But David would be one I would coach.
David's a guy.
Had his own way of
doing things. He did. Beat it to his own drum, that's for sure. So well done, David King Christopher. Brownie's the boy or student back then you'd rather coach. So well done. A lot of names there, but the point of that is there's no right answer. There's a cracking list of names in rugby.
Sorry for those that I'm knocked out.
And there's a fair, don't apologise, but just about all of them did both.
Yeah.
Rugby and swimming, nearly all of them.
My philosophy back to then was in your off season, do something.
Oh, multi-athletes. Ask Anthony Petrie. 100% agree with you. Brownie, you've lived a hell of a life, mate. That is 1 hour on the dot. It's lunchtime. We don't want to hold you up because you're probably teaching 5 and 6, but I appreciate you coming down. It was really important to time it with Old Boys Weekend. Happy Old Boys Weekend to you and Macca. Hope you
Yeah.
get a chance to sit back and enjoy it. You're an amazing educator. As I said to you before, you're right up there with the names of the Sermons, the Kaisers, the Wallaces and the Wards. So
Thank you.
thanks for all your service to our school and the passion you show the boys day in, day out. We said Lee Holzbaum, you can't question his passion for this school. You can't question Ian Brown's either. So all the best to the family.
Thank you.
Love to your mum and dad, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Wonderful.